Hey guys, so for this video we'll be talking about the Sony FX30. I picked up this camera earlier this year and it definitely changed the way I work with clients and also with making content. I really love this camera and I feel like I've got a pretty decent workflow with it now. And with that, I'll share with you guys how I use this camera with my settings and also the different rigs I use for different use cases. First, let me go through my main settings. One of the main reasons why I love this camera is Cine EI. Now, if you don't know what Cine EI is, it's a form of filming in log, which basically means I'll be filming in S-Log3 all the time. And with Cine EI, it ensures that I'm filming in this camera's base ISOs, which is 800 and 2500. All that means is that in this mode, you can't cycle through all the different ISOs, but there is a shortcut button that I use, which basically means I can change between 800 ISO and 2500 ISO. This way I know that I'm getting the cleanest image possible and without any noise basically. Now, I don't always shoot in this mode. Sometimes for some client shoots I don't need to shoot in log at all, so I turn log shooting off. That basically just turns picture profiles back on, and I only ever use two picture profiles. That's picture profile off, so just the normal baked in picture coming from the Sony look, and S-Cinetone. Now, I haven't really played with S-Cinetone too much, but all I know is it's like halfway between PP off and S-Log3. It's got like a half baked in look, but it is flexible enough for you to be able to do some minor changes in the color grading process. And now another setting that is a must for me every time I'm filming is 4:2 10-bit. My previous camera was a Sony a7 III, which was only 8-bit. And with that, I really could not push the image that much at all in the color grading process anyway. With 4:2 10-bit in the Sony FX30, I really feel like there's so much more room for flexibility, and I can really play around with the colors a lot easier, and the image also just looks a lot cleaner in post. In terms of resolution, I'm always filming in 4K, and recently it has changed a little bit. I used to film in XAVC-S, which is the H.264 container, but after speaking with a couple other creators, I have tried the XAVC-HS, which is the H.265 container. In terms of quality, there's really not much difference between H.264 and H.265. I believe H.265 can save you a little bit more space in your memory cards, but after doing some research, I have seen that H.265 is a better container for 4K resolutions and above, so 4K, 6K, 8K. In terms of frame rates, I'm always filming in 24 frames per second, sometimes in 60 frames per second if I do need slow motion. This camera does have an option to use 120 frames per second or 100 frames per second, but I've never really felt like I needed to use that high of a frame rate. It's not really my style either. However, if you do want to shoot in 100 or 120 frames per second, you will need one of those V90 cards. And finally, for the main settings, I'd just like to mention white balance, and with this I always tend to use the manual option of just scrolling through the kelvins. There is auto white balance, but I've never actually used that, and when I did used to use it before, when I had the a7 III or using a rented camera for example, I do notice like a shift when I'm changing scenes or I'm just like quickly whipping the camera, and it's a little bit more annoying to deal with to balance in post, so I always avoid to use that. There are some presets as well, like cloudy for tungsten and that kind of stuff, but I always just forget about that, and yeah, if I need to change white balance, I just do it manually. So with the main settings out of the way, let's talk about the FN menu or the function menu. So the function menu I use all the time for changing some settings that I may have to dig for in the main menu settings, or literally just to check if I'm in the right settings as well. I can also use the quick menu for this by just pressing the middle button in the dial, but yeah, sometimes the function button works a little bit quicker as well. The first one's audio recording level, which I use to adjust the audio levels coming into the camera from the different microphones that I use. Focus mode if I need to change between autofocus or manual focus. The focus area, for this one, especially when I'm vlogging, I just leave this on wide for most of the time. Select LUT so I can quickly check how my footage looks with an S-Log3 LUT or with a Rec 709 conversion LUT. And yeah, there's things like record settings and file format, and it's not for changing, but it's literally just to check if I'm on the correct settings. And that's pretty much it for my main settings. Everything else, I either would have to dig through in the main menu or find it through the quick menu as well. So now I'll show you guys how I rig up my camera depending on the use case. So I have 4 different ways of rigging up my camera. The first one is just a basic setup. Then I have a vlogging rig, a run and gun rig, and then a full production rig as well. The basic rig is literally just a camera in a small rig cage, and it has 2 uses. One is for taking quick shots where I know I won't be taking audio, and the other is if I need to use this camera on a gimbal. One great thing about this cage is the fact that it has an Arca Swiss at the bottom, so it's really easy to mount onto other things like tripods. And because of the mounting holes at the bottom as well, I can just attach a different plate to the bottom of it. Now my vlogging setup is basically the basic rig, but with a microphone on top. And the main microphones I use is this microphone right here, which is the Rode VideoMic NTG. And if I need to use a wireless microphone, I'll either use a Rode Wireless Go or the HoloLand Lark M1. Then my run and gun rig basically just adds a top handle and an external monitor to the camera. The top handle attaches via a NATO rail, which makes it easier to attach. Then the monitor is connected to the top handle with an RE style mount, so it's on there pretty solid. And finally, I'll power the monitor with a separate NPF battery. And as you can probably guess, this rig is definitely heavier, but it is good when I'm doing client shoots because the weight essentially acts as a stabilizer, and so my shots will come out a little bit smoother but will still maintain that handheld look. Then for the full production rig, I remove the NPF battery from the monitor and I use a V-mount battery to power the entire system, so it keeps my camera on charge and powers the monitor as well. And using this V-mount battery, I can pretty much use this rig for 4 to 5 hours. And if it's for a full day, during lunchtime, I will charge my battery anyway. So for the most part, this battery lasts me all day. Now for this rig, I will be attaching my camera to this SmallRig V-mount battery plate. I have tried a normal base plate where I screw it to the bottom of the cage and attach 15mm rods to it as well. But I did find that I'm always rigging it up, packing it down, and it takes up so much time and it takes up more space in my bag as well. Whereas this battery plate is actually so useful. I can fold it up, keep the battery on there as well, and put that in one of the compartments in my bag. So the V-mount battery I'm using is the ZG Cine V99. And as I mentioned, it's a huge battery that can power my camera and my monitor for at least 5 hours. And finally, at the bottom of the V-mount plate, I have my tripod plate attached to that, which is just a Manfrotto plate. And with that, I can just slide my camera onto my heavy-duty tripod whenever I want. So yeah, this is how I use my Sony FX30 for different use cases. I absolutely love this camera and has helped me a lot this past year. And I even considered getting a second one. However, I'm probably just going to wait for an FX3 Mark II maybe. But yeah, thank you guys for watching and I'll see you guys in the next one.